All right, everyone. We'll call to order the Tuesday, June 27, 2023 meeting of the Cannon Beach Elementary School Rejuvenation Research Advisory Committee.
Let's name it. Let's
Now shortened to the NACUS Research Advisory Committee.
CBE
Be unofficial.
RAC.
Perfect. So a meeting is in order. We have a rough agenda in front of you that hopefully you've seen. I think I would like to go back and revisit where we ended last time before we move on to management a little bit. So if that's okay, I will proceed with that. And we will start with public comment. So is there anybody in the room that would like to make public comment?
Yes. There's somebody on the app. That might be Sam on Zoom. That 04.
Sam, are you online?
See the 0475. That might be Sam. Could be a spy.
971 area code though.
Sam, if you're online, unmute and let us know you're here. Otherwise, we'll keep moving forward.
Okay,
So Deb, welcome.
hi. So I'm going back to the very beginning of this project, and I remember writing the bridge possibility and how you see the river that winds into the sea, the sky that meets the sea becoming infinity, and the anticipation of wonder that nature brings and invites us. It awakens us in the spirit of what we will create. And remember, it's nature that brings us here, in the spirit of community. We will gather, grow, learn, and flourish in the possibilities that we dream. That was what I wrote when we started this. And this is what I'm going to write for today. In the beginning, the school was created with Native American history in mind. It was designed to reflect that, educating the tourists, the local community on how Sacagawea and Clark came to our shores. The desire to maintain the integrity of the school and the history of the community, for the community, the tourists, was the goal. The purpose is to retain that history. Revenues will come from visitors, grants, events, donations. Perhaps it will be grants from the tribes and federal and state grants. That will be a huge area of research to consider. CLT can be a backup funding. Someone needs to be hired as a nonprofit and make the place run like they have the Lincoln Cultural Center and the other centers that are doing well. And you know, I'm researching who's doing well. Tourism for people interested in Native history is huge, and people from Europe seek to go to Native American sites associated with Lewis and Clark. American Indian Alaska Native Tribal Tourism Association is something that arranges tours from Europe to Native sites here in America. We need to research that more. We need to talk with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Key here is inclusive approach with the hotels supporting them for the benefit of their customers. They will want to experience our center. We will be the gateway to Cannon Beach, the visitor center. So mission should be about the Native American values and education, respect for nature and the environment, sea life, wildlife, and their whole culture in general. The NACUS project should be considered a sacred place, like Cannon Beach is sacred, a place where they renew their souls and connect with spiritual values and reverence for the land. That is what the native tribes did that lived here long before us. We have only come along and destroyed their way of living in harmony with nature. We are the ones who can take credit for the destruction of nature, not the Native Americans. So we should live with their values in Cannon Beach. The tribe should be on board for sure. This is an opportunity, a dream, a vision to be fulfilled, something bigger than ourselves. If we create magic, the money will come. First, you have to see the dream. Create the vision, and then others will see it. And I see that as the key. That's all I'm saying. And I'll flood you with research.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm talking to the mayor from Lincoln City called me today. I talked to that urban renewal woman. She was brilliant. And I talked to the head of the Lincoln Cultural Association. Now I realize a lot of these places are bigger than what we want to do, but their framework is right. And they're successful because they did a framework, which has to be set up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deb. And is there anyone online who would like to make comment? And Sam, if you're there, raise your hand.
Hi, Gary. This is Dick Bash.
Yes.
I am wondering if we last time we talked about nonprofit board running the facility. And then there was also the mention of possibly it being operated in full by the city. And I know I have had experience in similar projects as a nonprofit. And so that's where I tend to, well, that's where my knowledge base comes from. And I'm not really certain about what the particulars are if it were to be totally operated by the city. And I'm wondering if it might be part of this process that we have a chance to, I guess, learn about both processes and make a decision as to what the final recommendation might be. Or is that not the scope, within the scope of the group?
No, I think you're just slightly ahead of us. I think we're going to take another look at use here tonight and make sure we've got that right. And then we're going to go right into what you're talking about.
Oh, good.
I think it was the consensus last meeting that we would look at a 2-track approach, or delivering a couple of options of recommendations of these management models for council.
Okay.
And I guess I would just say, I don't know that it's exclusively you hand it all to a nonprofit or you hand it all to the city. I think there are options in the middle that are a little more gray that I hope we'll get to talking about tonight.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else online?
I am here. Carrie's here. I apologize that my granddaughter used my computer and changed my screen name to Caribella, so that's going to be interesting, but I didn't catch it quick enough to change it, and I'd have to turn it off and change it, so I'm not going to do that to you guys. You're just going to have to deal with me as Caribella tonight.
That'll work.
Do we have to address you like that too?
No, thank you.
Or preferably not.
And that is Sam. Number.
Okay. So is Sam able to speak?
Should be. Is it the 0475?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Is there some,
Because I remember he.
on a phone, do you have to press a number or something like that to
Yes.
how do you do it when you're not on Zoom?
Okay, so Sam, it looks like we have you here, but I don't know if there's a way that you unmute yourself. I think we should be able to hear you if you can figure that out.
Because he gave me.
Okay.
His new number, so.
Press *6. Maybe Sam's ghost.
Or 6.
All right, well, we will keep moving. And we want Sam to weigh in here. So I would like to start with the draft, and I believe I did the draft the way I was instructed. We tossed it back and forth, and I believe that's what you have in front of you as draft. So you're so in kind of looking at it and compiling it, I'm still uncomfortable with some things. So I don't know where you're at, but I thought that calling it a cornerstone does not help anybody describe what the use is. So I wrote that revised version, which is mainly the same thing, except that it, and Dick, we can read this for you if you don't, since I don't think you've got the revised version.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't.
But it essentially just, it says it's going to be an interpretive center. And it's not an arts interpretive center or an education interpretive center. So I did work those into a second paragraph. So would it be okay if I read this for Dick?
Yep.
And whoever else is?
A picture of it and scan it to them.
Just
Yeah.
So this paragraph, it describes the primary use of NACUS. There are additional uses which I made no changes to from what the committee had suggested, but this is what my revision says. As a truly historic cultural site and its location adjacent to estuary, wetlands, and beach, we recommend that the primary use of the NACUS facility be as a cultural and ecology interpretive center with a focus on the site of the historical NACUS village and the ecology of the region, providing an additional attraction to Cannon Beach visitors and residents. The facility will also emphasize arts and education as part of its mission. The last sentence remained the same. Park improvements include an interpretive trail that should showcase the history of the site and the ecology of the region. So I'm open to hearing from you whether this is acceptable, whether you'd like to make some changes to this, or do you want to go back to version 2 and work from there?
I'll chime right in because I really do like the change to interpretive center. I think that it is a much more dynamic word. Cornerstone can be more interpretive of a feeling or and I think interpretive shows a mission, shows a purpose, and an action. And so I think it's a better word than cornerstone. So I would definitely advocate for this version, the second version.
I want to see the word tribe or tribal in there somewhere. And there's just a part of me, and this is nitpicky, and I admit that, part of me that was a journalist and a writer. I kind of want to just copy it. Like that first sentence is kind of a number of sentences. It could just be, you know.
It could start at we.
I mean, it's like a paragraph, but it's, what's that?
It could start at we recommend if you wanted to.
No, I
I
mean,
like the stuff in the first part of it.
yeah, no, I think it just, I guess get nitpicky copy editing stuff that I just think it could be tight.
Long.
Yeah.
I think is that key point.
Yeah, I like it.
I mean, I could certainly see that we could say on the site of the historical NACUS tribal village. Is that something? I mean,
Sure, I just want to see the word tribe in there somewhere.
Okay.
That'd be a good place.
Dick, I know I just read it to you, but your thoughts?
I agree. I think it would be, I like it, the change, and I agree. It would be nice to get tribal in there somewhere. But I want to make sure that in the telling of the history, that definitely the tribe is in there, but maybe it's the evolution of the interpretation of the evolution of the site or something, to make sure and include the school. You know, that it evolved from a village site into a school site. I don't know how the rest of you feel about making sure
appreciate
that's in that.
I like that.
Does it work, group, for it to read interpretive center with a focus on the site of the historical Nekus tribal village and the ecology of the region. Does that work for you?
That's kind of the revision I already have here, but to Dick's point,
I just inserted tribal where it could fit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I already put it in there, but Dick's point is telling the story of the school. Is that, should
Is it
we
too-
be including that in the primary use?
Is it too cumbersome to include that, or? I think there are people in the community that think that that's a primary
Hi.
purpose.
I don't know that you'll find anybody in this room that would disagree that we want to tell that story too. I guess, is it necessary to say it here? Becomes our question.
There's Sam.
Yeah,
Sam, yay.
I guess what I feel is if we put the word tribal in, that would be the beginning. Well, ecology comes first, then the tribe. But I think we're going to be talking about the history and the school evolve out of that. But I don't know if we need to mention it in this, but we will talk about the school for sure. And it'll still be a school in a way. It'll be teaching.
So
Right, Betty, since we're talking about education purposes, it will be a school.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it didn't drop out.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to.
I guess the way that I've got it now, it's that the primary use of the NACUS facility would be as a cultural and ecology interpretive center with a focus on the site of the historical NACUS village. So, I mean,
Mhm.
the school is definitely part of the site.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay,
did you have something?
Well, I just, and I would have to certainly defer to Dick's sensitivity, but Nakus tribal village doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Nakus is a tribe. I mean, I believe it's the Nehalem tribe, and just sticking it in there doesn't really do anything for me.
I agree. I might add the Clatsop Nehalem Nakus tribal, no, Nakus village. Clatsop Nehalem's Nakus village.
Wasn't called Nikus.
Right, well, and I wasn't even sure of that because I'm not that familiar, but that was,
We named it.
yeah.
Well,
He was.
it was mentioned in Lewis and Clark's journals. It just was not spelled this way, which I don't know if you have read Lewis and Clark, they spelled everything every way.
Yeah.
But this was essentially Doug Doer's interpretation of the name of the village and the people.
As named by Lewis and
I would
Clark, or that.
defer.
No,
They
he
recognize-
he asked them, they asked them who they were. And then,
Obviously, I'm not.
and Dick, I don't know if you want to weigh in additionally on my version of it, but.
No, you got it.
So maybe my comment really doesn't help to do. I just thought it didn't fit, but I didn't know that backstory.
You're right. Well, you're right. I agree. I think putting ownership by saying Clatsop Nehalem's Nakus village site.
Okay. So we got two things. Bruce, did you want to jump in?
No, I was asking, I was gonna ask either Sam or Dick for a clarification on where Nakus came from, the word Nakus.
Okay,
I think we got it.
okay.
The Parks Committee.
Totally kind of got,
Went a little back
No,
farther.
I know, but I mean, we worked with the tribe.
We've got-
Committee.
two revisions here that we're considering. Inserting the word tribal when it says site of the historical Nakus tribal village. And or adding Clatsop Nehalem.
In-
So
in
where are we
front
at
of-
with those?
In front of Nakus.
Wherever it fits. There's some writing experts there.
I'm gonna, before the next meeting,
Hard
What's that?
time to look at it, yeah.
for the next meeting, I'm gonna try to copy edit and say, I mean, it's something like rather than be a run-on sentence, it's like, you know, this was, what is it?
Yeah.
This facility will provide additional attraction to Cannon Beach residents and visitors. That's a sentence, you know, like, they're just chop it into,
I can,
yeah, it's just tighter.
shorten sentences. But back to my question,
Without
is it
changing.
important to put,
Yeah, content wise, I'm good.
I mean, do we want to say site of the historical Clatsop Nehalem Nakus tribal village?
Or why don't you wordsmith that one also?
All right. You tell me to wordsmith it, you know I will.
Thank you.
Okay. I will try to get,
So can I throw one suggestion out, and I don't know if it would work, but primary use of the Nakus facility be cultural and ecology interpretive center with a focus on Nakus, comma, the site of the historical Clatsop Nehalem tribal.
Yeah.
village.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
That,
I think so. Now, if I can remember that and my notes will carry me through.
it's yours freely. I did want to make one.
You too.
though,
Yes.
Before we move on, I liked your revision as well. But my observation is I was always uncomfortable with the one that we left last time with, because the end of the next to last and the last sentence basically said the same exact word.
Yeah.
And that just bugged the heck out of me.
Yeah.
You've cleaned that up. Thank you.
Oh, did I?
Well,
Okay.
you may not intend it, but yeah, I like it much better.
Sam, are you in on this conversation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have
Well,
anything-
no, actually, I am kind of curious, what document are we talking about? The draft?
Yeah, I don't know how long you've been on, but I drafted what I thought was our consensus from the last committee meeting. And then I did a revision because I thought we needed to be a little more specific about what the use is rather than that term cornerstone. I think really we need to define, we need to be clear about the use for CETA to continue moving forward.
And that's as an interpretive.
Yes.
Primary.
So it essentially changed cornerstone to interpretive center. But it required a little more work than that. And so you weren't on when I read it.
No, I was having Zoom troubles and I've also got a migraine, so I'm not a happy camper here.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, if it's okay, I would like to move forward. I've got your notes.
Send me just a copy of it and I'll just take a look at it that way.
Yeah, we'll get version 3 draft of this together. And this is not going to be our final. We'll still give this another go around. And maybe it'll shift a little bit because of the management model that we come up with. I don't know. So if it's all right, I will move on and make those revisions and get them to you.
Thanks.
So now it's time to continue our conversation on management and operations of the Nakus facility. And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we're talking about making the 2-track recommendations on management.
If we have reach a consensus or a majority on one, I don't know why we should present 2.
What does a 2-track look like to you?
We just Dick talked about it a little bit, but I don't think it's as cut and dried as what Dick said. One, the city contracts with a possibly newly formed nonprofit to run the entire operation. All the city does is lease the building to them. The city would need some kind of agreement ensuring we meet the definition of tourist facility within whatever kind of contractual agreement we have with the nonprofit. A second option is that the facility is managed or at least overseen by the city. Now, that could mean the city hires a facility manager, but contracts out all the other functions, which we haven't even defined what they are yet. But where I see this as being potential gray is I think of the relationship between Friends of Haystack Rock and Haystack Rock Awareness Program. So the city essentially funds and directs Friends Haystack Rock Awareness Program, but we have a memorandum of understanding with a nonprofit group. So that nonprofit group could do all of the programming. They could do all of the fundraising. They could actually be the ones we're contracted with to hire and manage the rest of the staff. So that's where I don't necessarily see it as city runs the whole thing or a nonprofit runs the whole thing.
The second one is the one that I'm leaning toward. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I mean, it looks like a model that's worked very effectively in this community for years.
You're talking about the Haystack
I don't
Rock.
think that's,
Right, yeah.
I don't see the comp there.
Analogy.
What'd you say? Andrew?
I don't see the comparison at all. It's such a different deal.
The Haystack Rock, the Friends of, really doesn't provide programming. It provides funding for some minor items. They do broader work, for example, working with the Audubon, those kind of things, but they don't do anything as far as the programming. We try to get volunteers from them, but we don't always have, that's not always effective, nor do we rely on them for recruiting volunteers. So it's really a separate, it's a supportive group of a city function that is city directed.
Well, when we founded it, the primary intention of Friends of Haystack Rock was to be a fundraising arm. Because we recognize that the nonprofits have more opportunities for fundraising than the city would itself. So that was the primary reason.
And they do that. They still do that.
But that doesn't mean that we can't modify that model so that the actual programming does come out of a nonprofit. But I mean, there's probably a lot of options in between. So those are kind of the two tracks that I was thinking we would talk about. And Andrew's right. Maybe one of them will rise to the top as the obvious one, but
Right.
who else wants to weigh in?
Gary, I like the second option to begin with as our recommendation to the council, that we start with the city management because it's a safe bet as we're developing the scope of, how the building is, when we break ground, how the building is proceeding and being finished. And I think that a lot of our research here is going to drive a lot of interest and also demand for space. And as that develops along the way, then a broader management scheme, I think, will become obvious. But to begin with, I think it's a very safe and careful way for the city to manage it, so that we are so that we do determine that we are addressing our mission statement and a purpose statement, and that we're soliciting use of the building under our focus terms.
Who's next? Sam, do you want to?
I'll jump in. I kind of agree with Carrie. I'm fully behind the separation, the first option, but I do think that a growth development kind of phase would be very effective. and follow Carrie's model and let the city create a management plan and all the guidelines, and probably hire somebody or something to get it started. But I would definitely say we call this a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan, and say at that point, it will be separate. And guarantee that, so that it has a sunset and it goes into a 501c3 nonprofit management system.
Then you're using that, the 2 years, the nonprofit could be developing. I don't understand that at all. Then the nonprofit's gonna hit the ground from zero. It doesn't
No.
make any sense to me at all.
That's,
I think that gives the nonprofit 2 years to ramp up.
They have 2 years to wrap up, essentially.
but it'll be impossible until we start looking at the use demand for the facility about how that should be structured and how many employees should be involved in the management. So if we start out with a manager or a managing director or whatever we want to call that person, and also we're going to absolutely need ground zero maintenance, that's really all we need to advise to the council, with the idea that it will be developed as needs and use are further defined.
I feel like our statement here talks about what the uses are going to be. And if we go with this, then we do need to have a nonprofit set up right away to be working with the tribe, to be working with people that know about ecology and whatever the things that we're going to be teaching. HRAP already has their curriculum, but ECFR doesn't have their curriculum. And the tribe, we want to do some amazing educational things with the tribal knowledge. And that has to start right away because it takes a while to set that all up. So if they could go parallel, I think it would be very important. So that's my 2 cents.
You want to go before Barb?
Wait for Barb.
No, go ahead.
I'm curious what the emphasis is on a 501c3 model. Is it less expensive? Is it more nimble? Which is something that I'm looking at this thing. Somebody's got to be, it has to be, whoever's running this has to be able to respond quickly to whatever conditions are. And is a committee, 5 people, whatever, more nimble than what, staff would be?
The committee hires a staff person.
Pardon?
There would be an executive director that would be on call. That would be their job.
I mean, hired by the nonprofit?
Yeah, because to Bruce's point, I mean, a committee is never going to be as nimble as one individual can be, right?
Like if you have a director that's under the city manager, every department here runs that way.
Right.
Without a committee in between. And again, I don't have a problem if we go in that way. I just don't see what the benefit is, other than there's a perception that it's easier for a 501c3 to get funding. And that may be true, I don't know. But other than that, I don't see where the advantage is. And I guess I'm looking at it from my standpoint that if it doesn't work, somebody's gonna be looking at the city manager to make it work. And then it's like, well, the person doesn't work for the city manager, the person works for the board, or doesn't work for the city manager, it doesn't work for the council. Those kind of things. That's what I'm talking about, being nimble. And but what are the advantages to it?
Well, if I can jump in for a minute, I think having a 501c3 provides more options for funding. Not that it makes it funding easier, but it provides additional options that can be used with city funding. And in listening, you know, I'm wondering if there's a city manager and then there's the city directors of different departments. Would it not be a duplication then to have a 501c3 that would also have like an executive director and then director of different departments? Is that more expensive if it's run totally separate that way?
Probably more expensive to hire a city employee and pay them.
No, I think you're right. I think if there's an executive director, it's either city staff or it's the total nonprofit model. I don't think you would do both,
I have a
but
few,
we let Barb weigh in before but we'll keep this going.
I think the approach is a little bit of what Carrie said, a little bit of what Sam said, a little bit of Betty. I don't know about Andrew. But do it parallel.
Yes.
Start out with city. Especially during the opening part of it, but get the 501c3 running. But the city would be the executive director. The 501c3, their main purpose would be for programming. And then the city's the management part of it, and then eventually morphing into total nonprofit. After the time frame, I'm not positive on 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I see it as directly parallel to a city director that's got the ultimate responsibility, but then working with the nonprofit, the fundraising arm, the programming arm. I guess when it comes to staffing, I'm still open to matters, you know, your point of view on that, whether that is something to be contracted. I don't necessarily see a whole big new city program. You know, maybe we can let Bruce weigh in again on that if that's what he's thinking, but if the nonprofit could provide all of that, the programming, the fundraising, and contract the additional staff necessary to run it, that seems like that might be a nice model. Andrew?
Okay, these are some benefits of the nonprofit model. The first, and Sam has mentioned it last meeting,
Can I ask without any city,
just a nonprofit.
just nonprofit? Okay.
As Sam mentioned last time, there's a political perception that, you know, there's a huge disconnect right now between the city, this building, and the community about what's happening over there. If you build a nonprofit board to run it, it would at least be seen as being more in the hands of the community again. If you take it away from them, it's going to continue down this fraught road that we've been on. Another benefit, a city staff person, if they're full-time, that's going to be much more expensive. You have to pay PERS, you have to do like, you know, health insurance, like, you know, a full-time city staff person is going to be a lot more expensive than a nonprofit who probably hires and treats them like a contractor. And then we've talked about it since the beginning. There's a huge benefit of if it's run by the city and the National Socialist Party comes to do a rally, we can't say no. This gives the nonprofit gives protection against, you know, groups that we don't, it doesn't make it a free-for-all.
I think those are 3 excellent points for consideration. And I mean, I couldn't argue with any of them.
Well, I think personally that the staff at this center should be paid appropriately and receive benefits and everything that a city employee would get.
I think you're gonna have trouble hiring and retaining people. If you're trying to go ahead and get below market for managers or employees.
I agree with Bruce on that. I think that this is, if you're gonna have integrity in the management of the facility, you're gonna have to pay for it, and pay includes benefits. So I would not encourage the just going out to fish on a complete nonprofit scope to start with. It's, those are all things that can happen. I'm also a little bit baffled by Andrew's comment that we are in a total disconnect with the community, because I guess that hasn't been my experience with what we're doing down there. I don't understand that. We are in process right now of trying to do exactly what the community has asked for us to do. And I think that we're answering each of those interest areas in a very positive way.
And I don't see anybody on looking at this meeting except Sharon.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
So I don't see if there's that much of a disconnect, and there's people here now that are trying to go ahead and sort all this out. I just don't see anybody on, attending or listening to the meeting. I would
That's
just
because
think
they're disconnected.
That's not representative of what's. Conversation.
Yeah, and I think,
We're open for public comment. I don't understand what you're saying. They're disconnected. They've disconnected themselves.
well,
Yes,
no,
because they don't trust what's going on here.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
We've had
What
a
can
lot
you
of-
what can you do? What can you do about that? It's like the people trying to do honest, good work here. And so to run around backwards and say, oh gosh, but the person that was mad and didn't show up, we should be really worried about them. I don't see that as a positive direction at all. We're trying to get good work done here. So let's just concentrate on getting the good work done.
I think
think
we
we
are.
Good.
I think we are too. And I think we need to take Andrew's point and consider it, because there is some of that out there, and we had a lot of blowback on this, and we haven't really been able to jump out in front of it and say, look, here's what we're doing. It's funded by TLT dollars. It's going to be a great addition to this community. So all of this is holding us back a little bit from being able to ease some of those concerns, but I think those are valid concerns. Betty, did you have something that you were?
Well, I was just thinking when Andrew was talking about the Socialist Party or whoever they are, Sam talked about like having the events be in line with our mission. And I think that would help us overcome that issue. If we align our events with our interest,
What our primary use is.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Then I think we can just move on from that worry.
I think Sam, in our first meeting, brought this up and wondered if Ashley could weigh in on ways that we could safeguard against those kinds of things. So can we make sure that happens and we get some kind of opinion? If there are, what are the best ways to protect ourselves from that? Because I don't know if, what we're saying now means that that's going to prevent third parties from using it for something. If they don't have if it's not an ecology organization or it's not a cultural organization. So I'm not totally sure of that, but I would sure like a legal opinion on ways that we could control that use. Deb, do you want?
Yeah, the Lincoln City Cultural Center took 2 years to work out their contract with the city and the nonprofit. It was a real indeed, they had to really go at it and all had the same goal, but it took them 2 years to work out that contract. And it was really important, and lawyers have to be involved. And you have Bateman Seidel, who I use for my business, and they're really good with contracts. It's all on the contracts, and that has to be worked out with the city and a nonprofit.
they work together. Right, Bruce?
Yes.
Well, when I had a nonprofit, we were under a big organization and they sponsored us. And so we were under them and we had to answer to them. So I don't see that we would have a problem if we had a nonprofit parallel to the city. And we were the nonprofit was the one offering the programming, as long as it follows the mission. I think we're going to have less trouble than we think we're going to have. As long as we're all going in the same vision and the curriculum we're writing fits the vision, the city can oversight that, make sure. But I don't know, how is the curriculum written for HRAP? How did that all work out?
Well,
Evolved
it
over
was
many years.
pre-existing Friends of Haystack Rock. So.
Yeah.
From what I remember on that board, we were there to provide guidance and support, almost in a supervisory role or however we could assist. And fundraising was the
I mean,
big.
that curriculum kind of writes itself in that here's what we can show you, we can teach you about what's around us.
Yeah.
Like that's, you know.
It'll take some work though.
Yeah.
But it's certainly developed with the school programs and, you know, from a few volunteers standing out there to paid staff and.
Right. Okay.
But I'm hearing, if I may, sounds like it's getting more and more cumbersome.
Yeah.
Bruce initially asked, what is the most efficient way to do this? And the most efficient is to make it one organizing body and one managing person. That's it. And, that's a business model. You want this thing to run and function. So if you have somebody who wants to have a class on something, whatever, and they have to go through a nonprofit for programming, and then it has to go through city staff for some sort of correctiveness. And at the top of that, you still have the city council who might not want that class to be taught. And then you got an executive director stuck in the middle trying to figure out what he's supposed to do and how he's supposed to schedule something. That's just cumbersome as all get out. What you want is the capability of an executive manager to run the function and a nonprofit to oversee what's going on, planning for the future and long range stuff.
I
agree, Sam. I agree. Yeah.
And what I was proposing originally is to just say, let the city council develop the organization, draft the first nonprofit body, form it up, and then let them go with it and step out of it. So that they then become the organizing body and the planning body, and they hire an executive director to run the place. That could be happening within the same timeline as the building is being refurbished.
So Carrie, you said you agree.
I totally agree with Sam. Absolutely streamlining it. And Bruce has already spoken to the fact that you don't want somebody reporting to a committee, reporting to a director, reporting to the city, it just doesn't make it as streamlined and simple, just as Sam is pointing out. And that would be my recommendation too.
Sam's point is to not have any city staff involved at all. It's to rent the.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you're just saying managing director. And so the managing director is who pays the managing director, Sam?
Well, it'd be the facility, so it'd be the 501c3, but they get their funds from the contract with the TLT money.
Okay.
So they would have an executive, you'd have a staff that's paid properly. They wouldn't have to go through PERS and all. They wouldn't be a city employee. They'd be a facility employee.
And so and I think that fits with Deb's research too, correct?
Lincoln City.
Deb?
Yeah, they didn't want to do, the city doesn't do the arts and culture well, they just gave them, they delegated that to the nonprofit and let them do their work, but it was all in that contract, that was the most important thing, is that they had an understanding between them.
That has been the majority of your research for these things, right? That they're nonprofits?
Yeah,
Well, we just looked at culture. We just looked at the centers. You know, we just started dialing up centers and saying, how is your organization? And they're all nonprofit, except for the one that I went after, which had married itself to the community college.
I will point out one difference. Lincoln City Cultural Center has $0 of tourism and arts, or has tourism dedicated lodging tax dollars, 0.
Okay.
So the city has this responsibility to ensure that we're meeting the definition, the legal definition of a tourist facility. So
Still love a lawyer to come talk about that.
That would all
You know
be
what?
defined in the contract for the
Yeah.
lease.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I see, excuse me, when I think about what we're going to be doing at the center, I think about, hey, HRAP being there. Nobody tells, I mean, HRAP being there, they have their own curriculum, they've created it. ECFR would be there, it would have its own curriculum, somebody would help create that. And the tribal community would have curriculum and somebody would help research and make that. But what are we talking about? These people coming in and wanting to teach a class, that would be more like an event. So it wouldn't be part of what is normally happening there. It would be considered as an event. And so I don't see where that would create any problems. Because we're going to have lots of different activities happening there. But when you talk about the nonprofit, I think the nonprofit is going to be dealing with the educational part of it and getting funding for that. So that's I don't know about the board of directors. I don't know why the city could have, I understand your worry about getting too many cooks in the kitchen, but I somehow think we can do it parallel and still have it be efficient.
So I think if you're gonna do it, it should not be all one or the other. You might have a startup time frame in there. But I think when you start, trying to go ahead and force a parallel into it. So if there's an executive director and a city manager and possibly a delegate from the city manager to be overwatching the facility, that's gonna be too much. I think if it can run that way and it goes that way, and that's what we end up with, I'll be fine with it. But I think that, one thing, I think that there's the devil's in the details. You've got, we're talking like $500,000 operating funds. Are we going to turn $500,000 over to 501c3?
A brand new 501c.
Brand new 501c3. And so there's a start there, but I would also want to have a bright red line between the city and the 501c3.
Well, it seems like right now we have Andrew and Sam that are strongly in the camp of give it all to a nonprofit. And they're responsible for everything. And what I'm hearing from the rest of you, although Carrie, I'm not sure where you're at, so maybe.
Well, you know what?
can
I'm trying to listen. So this is really interesting. So can we do a best of mock-up from our neighbors that have done, I mean, Deb's done this incredible, valuable research. Can we do a whiteboard of their outline of their management style? And let's just get a nice black and white in front of the whole group that says, hey, this is how these guys run it. And this is how these guys run it. And I think Deb said, and I think Gary, you said this too, that the TLT funding is kind of key because that's what we're working off of, right? So we want to see that working. But we also want to see nonprofit versus city management working. And then we have it in front of us, and I think we can dial down when we have the two scenarios kind of mocked up in front of us with some really good, examples of living, breathing culture, centers.
I would be curious if any of them that we've looked at are funded by TLT dollars, tourism dedicated TLT dollars. I have not found one.
Okay.
Oh.
I thought you had an example, Deb.
Maybe the Newport Maritime Museum is that kind of a model, but
Okay, then can we back it out and just say city dollars? Right? Sam, does that work? If we backed it out and just said city funding?
City funding or even public funding.
Right.
It could be coming from other places, but so you
Voters,
get public funding grants.
voter funding, but I think that it would be really valuable to take a look at that and say, these are the pros and cons. And then I think we'll be able to make a pretty good recommendation based off of that.
well, for 30
I'd like
years.
to add to Carrie a little bit also, in fact, that I think we need to work on also next, maybe defining what Betty is talking about, and the fact that there's so much education happening compared to events, compared to the public use or the resident use, the athletic part and other stuff. I think we need to hammer out some of that so that we have a little clearer idea to what the executive manager is actually being asked to do. Because if somebody is there, has to be doing all this curriculum or planning a school, that's a whole lot different than just scheduling events. So I guess that needs to be talked about some more.
I'm with Sam on that. I thought this original idea of this was an event center which would teach you by osmosis or by interpretive things, but full-on school was not the pitch.
I don't know. I thought we abandoned event center long ago. Not that there can't be events, but
I mean, I see a class or a workshop as an event.
yeah.
My understanding was we were moving, when we started talking about education and interpretation and getting the tribal community involved, and also ECFR, it seems to me it doesn't have to be called a school, but it's going to have a lot of education happening there. And I think the grants are going to be coming in for these educational opportunities, and we won't have to depend so much on events. We're going to have I feel we're going to have it funded through the educational portion, and there's going to be the gym can have events all the time, but the classroom area will be a learning center. That's how I see it. And
just to be clear, when I say events, I don't mean like to make money. I think it's going to be funded by TLT dollars. I think this happens. That's what it
Guaranteed for 30 years.
yeah.
That's the construction side.
Yes,
Gary,
that kind of locks us into
Right.
living up to that legal definition.
Lincoln City has a lease agreement with the city and the nonprofit with no charge for the rent. But they report yearly and sometimes more often to meet the lease requirements. So they have to be in partnership.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the city does the structure and the electrical and all that stuff, but they do all of the operational.
Okay, to bring it back, I'm still hearing Andrew and Sam saying nonprofit all the way. Just gonna give the lease over to them and figure out the mechanisms for making sure that it's tourism dollars. Carrie still, sometimes she's this way and sometimes she's that way from what I'm hearing. I'm hearing the other.
Who hires the nonprofit director?
The nonprofit board.
So you got to form a board just to get management.
It's usually how it's
So
done.
that's what I was worrying about. That's why I wanted to start out with city, because I felt like it was going to be easier to recruit a quality manager as a city hire than I was to have it go
And
through
then
a
in 2 years, they're gonna lose their
501(c)(3).
job.
In that sense, I agree with you, Carrie, because we need that organizing beginning.
Right.
How does
Right.
that start? You know, if the 501(c)(3) is starting right away, that would be a city council says, just give it to them and let them run. But I think we need to help get this started by kicking in and designing the guideline for what we want. And actually, this is more of the contract form than it is forming the 501(c)(3). But it is, we would have to form the 501(c)(3) through somebody that would be us to start with, or the council to start with. But at the same time, you're hiring a manager, but the governance of the manager comes from the 501(c)(3) once they are in place.
Once they are in place.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Okay, so I'm hearing the other three of you saying
So-
this parallel track. City run, at least to begin. Sam seems to be in that camp a little bit.
And it could be city started. And then that manager could either be continued and hired by the 501(c) to continue as managing director, or not, depending on how the center develops as far as the needs of the center are concerned, and the qualities of the manager are looked at and said, is this the person that's going to be able to carry this thing forward, or is this a person that's not going to be able to carry this thing forward?
You guys have any additional thoughts through this?
I think, well, quite a bit, but I still think, the piece that seems to me that we're quibbling about or worrying about is that initial time frame before, while we're learning what we need to know. And I'm betting every one of these organizations went through that we talk about. Yeah, they're all run maybe by 501(c)(3)s now, but in the very early phases, I kind of doubt they were. I bet they were more city operations that turned into a 501(c)(3) or.
You mean the groups that they're researching?
Yeah, the research groups. I'm sorry, I should have been more clear.
Yeah.
But we really don't know. What we know is what they do today.
Right.
And they're all established today.
Mhm.
I just think that we need to have, hands-on control for the first couple of years to see what happens.
We'd like to talk about Lincoln City. Lincoln City uses TLT dollars to run and operate the Jennifer Sears glass blowing studio. They use TLT dollars to run and manage their culinary center, which I think they've discontinued now. So, I mean, they were running TLT programs and making them completely city run. Now, this isn't the same. I think we've got a great opportunity here for a hybrid, at least to start.
Who hires the board?
Here's the board.
Boards aren't
Makes the
hired.
board.
Maybe the city
Haven't
council.
worked that out yet.
What'd you say, Sam?
We haven't worked that out yet. That's the tricky problem.
Yeah, exactly. TBD.
But Sam did have a very interesting proposal about how to do that.
I thought so too.
That,
But then you're still, I mean,
Yeah.
no,
I have huge concern about the capacity of volunteers in this community. And I'm on several nonprofit boards, and we're losing people right and left. And where are we going, where are we gonna get the resources to form another 501c3? We have no place for them to live.
True.
If we're gonna attract new people into the town. There's just, I don't want to be negative, but I think we need to be realistic.
Well, we have people
I
like this
think
who want to be
this-
part of the board. So, yes, I mean, be forming a nonprofit and that process would include creating a board of directors and
In Lincoln City, the nonprofit was established before the center. So they were a functional art culture group that became
Yes.
a nonprofit. So they were already established.
yeah.
But we don't have that here.
No, you're right, Barb.
Yeah.
Everything you said, I totally agree.
Okay, Bruce.
If the council's decision is to go with the 501c3 model, then we probably have 18 months before the facility would be operational. So if you're going to do it and you want to try to get as much of a jump start, then it's the time is to convince the council and then to go ahead and start that process now and pull people in. And then when they're in as a board, they will have 16, 15, 12 months of immersion in what's going to be happening there.
I think in any case, we are going to want to have that board.
Yeah.
Whether there's a city director that's overseeing it, I think we need that board for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe they take over everything eventually if it proves to work that way. But I agree with you. I think it's, once we make that decision, hopefully we can move on getting that board together. Because that's, again, the fundraising portion of it. And then how much more, I guess, becomes a question as this matures and gels. We haven't heard from Dick in a while, so Dick, do you have any thoughts you want?
I'm right on board thinking that we should move pretty quickly.
You're still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on board with pretty much everything that's been said, especially bringing people on sooner rather than later. Looking at 12, 18 months kind of planning that will be needed, definitely. And I see the curriculum as really being there for the interpretation, which can be formal classrooms or just having material available for people to use or look at or manipulate. I'm jumping all over what's been said, but I think parallel concept is a good idea. And to what Bruce said, it'll give that necessary time to see, well, if it works or it doesn't work. But yeah, I'm awake and listening.
We knew you were. I don't know. I feel like we're making progress.
Yeah.
I think you've still got 2 tracks in to take forward. What it sounds like to me.
It sounds to me like we have pretty much consensus. Andrew may still be the outlier on this, that we want to at least, that we probably all see forming a nonprofit right now. And with the exception of Andrew, getting this thing started with at least a city director.
Yep.
Is that how Sam feels though?
Well, he said, that's what he was saying to start with.
You're talking about if you want to start forming a 501c3 right away,
Mhm.
that's a beginning step.
Right.
So that's what we need the most. So why don't we work on that model, because we're gonna have to define what their job is, and define what some of the other jobs are that's gonna be happening. At that point, we'll narrow down what an executive director will actually be doing. So that actually is this following step. And you might have a board in place in time to help decide that.
But can we start with a recommendation to the council that we dual track until we feel confident that we've got a good model going forward?
Yeah.
But I would,
How are we going to fund the formation of a 501c3? Because you can't use TLT money for that.
That's why I'm saying dual track. That, Barb, that was why I thought that was a compromise. So that we could dual track, we could start with city with the idea that we would be seeking to form a 501(c)(3).
That's a very good question, Barb. I don't
Is that
know what that would
$500?
look like.
And that's not something I've got in my tool. That's not something I have in my wheelhouse. I can't define those rules. So somebody's going to have to tell us what those rules are.
Yeah, I count on some of you to help us with what that looks like, to get it formed and start to mold it into the direction that it can be. At least a big part of the management. I was gonna ask Betty, but we'll wait.
We started to stand up.
Okay, yes, we should hear from Bruce.
Thank you. I'm less comfortable with the dual track. And I would rather get started and do it. And then staff would work through a lot of the issues leading up. But I think that if you have a 501c3 and a city manager, who's going to hire that director? And does the 501c3 get a vote? Is it the decision of the 501c3? Does the 501c3 live with whoever is selected by the manager? I just think that there's the possibility of too much crosstalk as far as the trying to go ahead and make something happen. And I think that you need to have I think that it can get messy if you have, for example, if under the city, there's a director who knows he's going to go to work for somebody else soon. And so do you really have that kind of, control of the loyalty over the person? And again, who hires that person? So I think that what my preference is, if this is the direction, let's go and make it, get that direction going. And then there'll be time when the 501c3 board is ready and they're ready to go. Then we're closer to the point of opening. So they go ahead and they hire the person that they're going to have run with all this. But I am not a fan of parallel or somehow mixed or anything like that, because it's just, possibility for mistakes, miscommunication, and finger pointing. So I would stay away from it.
and I love all that. And we all agree in some way a nonprofit board has to be formed. We have 18 months to do that. An executive director is not going to be needed for a considerable period of time.
By 16 months, 17 months.
Okay,
So can we make a recommendation that does not contain who's supposed to hire the single most important employee? Will council accept that? Because that's kind of what we're talking about.
But Bruce, you're saying the city hires a director.
No.
Oh, you're going all nonprofit now?
You say either, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the others you're going. So we all,
Correct.
if we're gonna do it, we all work on going and getting the 501c3 set up. All decisions are made, when it comes time for them to come in and make decisions, that sort of thing.
And I'm seeing it as we move on the 501c3 because I think we're gonna want them at some level in
Sure.
fundraising and programming. And then maybe in 12 months or 16 months, we say, okay, is it go city manager or is this nonprofit ready? Are we ready to hand it over to them and worked out all the details? Is that what you're saying?
No,
That might be tough for the nonprofit to not know, they're gonna get really invested in it and then have it yanked from them.
right. I think you.
They need that answer.
Go with it. If you decide to not do it, I think it's easier to put it under city management than it is to go to a 501c3 3 months from opening. So I would say, just move forward and try to get the 501c3 up and running if that's what you're going to do.
And never have a city hired director.
No, there would.
And are you opposed to the idea of having, I mean, you're talking about having it opposed to the parallel track. And to me, that's a parallel track could be a city hired director overseeing the whole thing. Be responsible, it would report to you, make sure it is a tourism facility, but they do work with a nonprofit on programming and fundraising. And are you saying that that's not a model that?
I think that the person that you have in that position should work for who their boss is. And if it's going to be the 501c3, and they're the ones that are going to be doing the fundraising and taking that responsibility, they want to have control of that individual. If that person is going to be the point person.
What you said about finger pointing, really,
Yeah.
I think it would totally lead to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's.
Can I step in? I'm agreeing with Bruce, which is fun. What we're missing is the important part of this is the contract that you would have for funding the facility. So the city, the whole control that the city has is through the funding, not through who's making the decisions. Oddly enough, that's the reality of it. It's a lot like what we do with the Chamber of Commerce. They have their own board, they make their own decisions, but we throw them a bunch of money and they have to report how they are spending it. And the council then can say, oh, I don't like that, or I do like that. And yes, it's often tense but it's working fairly well. It's taken a long time to get that model to be reasonably good. And it will always be tense, but that's what it's about. We need to stay in tune with the fact that there's another element, and that's the contract that will be controlling how the city can affect the decisions that the board makes. Does that help?
I would use that chamber example as a total negative.
Really?
I do not believe the council has provided good oversight for that money, nor is a council capable of that. And so we're kind of throwing one more thing at council to oversee that's not necessarily their expertise. So I do have concerns that
Well, I mean, but
oversight always falls back on the council.
But I mean, if it was a city, is the city's expertise in like marketing and, event production? I mean,
you hire it.
well, the one person, but not the whole,
I see the whole building as being parallel. I see the gym as being the event center, which could be run by the city, and the school part could be run by a 501c3, and they could work together. But the city would have an oversight of the building And then the school would have portion of it where they're teaching or interpreting or, but there's this, it's like figure eight. One side is the events and the other side is the school. And it's always been a school. I mean, it's been a school. So the school could be the 501c3 and it could run kind of on its own. We would have oversight into what the mission was. It would follow this mission. And the events would be where the TLT money, but people are going to come here to do the classes too. So I don't see any problem with getting TLT money. But I just don't want the city to be running the educational any more than they run the HRAP. HRAP does its own curriculum and its own, I don't know.
City.
All that's under the city.
Yeah.
I know it is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the city didn't write the curriculum, the city, you know.
City staff, city staff
Content
members did.
and curriculum.
Okay, well, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my concern.
Okay, well, we've talked around and around a little bit. Deb, you have a quick,
Has anybody set up a 501c in this group? Okay, because I think it takes a while, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you need
And
an
it-
attorney. for
And it
that.
costs money.
So you'd be the one to speak that.
but I'm still of the mind that we wanted it one way or the other.
Can I be candidate?
I don't know, I'm still
Oh,
have to figure out Bruce's concern about a city person working with a nonprofit.
I'm saying that the nonprofit might as well hire the person.
Yeah.
I just don't know why. I see the potential for a problem if whoever the city manager is to hire somebody. And then there's some sort of a rub with members of the board. And that person, he or she was not hired by that board. There's just too many, I mean, an awful lot of
It'd be so,
success has to do with loyalty and, there's all kinds of parts to it. And we're kind of splitting it. And I don't know, again, where the benefit is for the city to hire somebody and then say to the board, this is your person.
I just see the city as the one responsible for whatever kind of mutual operating agreement that we have with a nonprofit.
I think it just would be so hard to know where the buck stops.
I don't know if I'm repeating what's already been said, but I think if there comes a point where, let's say we started nonprofit right now or soon, and we go through the whole process of developing the mission statement and answering the questions about goals and what's the intention of the nonprofit, and selecting the board members who would work, well, probably select potential board members initially who would work as a group with the city to develop the needs statement and the mission statement, and work with the city to hire somebody so that they would participate in the interview process. And then with you make a selection. And yeah, there could be conflict going on in there, but I think it is a possibility to do that together and then have that person work with the board and in moving forward.
Okay, so how can we move this conversation forward? And to the next level and get to the point where we're actually honing in on a recommendation? What would you like to see? Are we still on some kind of two-track?
I just have this feel, this is such a big choice that I feel like the council's gonna completely go their when the 5 council members are sitting up here, they're going to put their own spin on it regardless of what we do. It's because it's so big.
I know, it's a big, big decision.
It's
Yep.
still
I don't, and I don't want to like say that this is all
the
pointless.
job you've always
I'm starting to feel like
And,
that. It's such.
I don't know, I'm listening. I think Barb's listening. We're all trying to figure out.
Nancy, we see you up there.
Nancy, hello Nancy.
I think we need to clarify some of the more finer details of operations.
Give
What
an
do you mean?
example.
Do we want to go through that list that we had from CETA? Maybe just table this for a minute and start, maybe we can check off some of those off the checklist.
I would
Questions?
rather you wait until you are further along in the process and then answer those questions. There's no rush on those.
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to take what we've talked about tonight and try to put it together for you, so we've got a good starting point for our next meeting. So
And it sounds like Andrew has the homework assignment of tightening up that use statement.
I'm gonna do that.
No, Andrew's supposed to do it. He keeps saying that it's not right, so he should do it. And then you should go, check it out with you. So, but we should come back next meeting with that mission statement tightened up and be able to vote on it.
Okay, it's not a mission statement.
Whatever,
It's
the use statement, what are we gonna call it then?
It's almost a mission statement for the nonprofit.
Okay, how about use statement?
Can't dictate that.
But
it's
the
a
advisory
recommendation of
council,
use.
the council has asked us to provide a use for the facility. So could we please define that and be able to vote on it and say yes? And then we need to decide, we need to figure out who's doing homework on whether we are dual tracking, one tracking. We've heard everybody's recommendations, but we definitely should go to council with our recommendation.
I would like those recommendations and maybe we vote on it, whatever we do, but to include, is it open daily? 9 to 5. Is that what we're doing?
I like 11 to 5.
Well,
And is it 7 days a week?
yeah.
I like closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Or, like most, a lot of places are closed, Monday or Tuesday in town anyway, so.
Ultimate use would be lovely to have 7 days, since it is an informative center and could be the gateway to the town in which people ingress and egress every day of the week. So it would be nice, but this is not on opening day. It could be, we recommend that we seek to have a 7-day open facility. And we don't have to commit to that because that's in the minutia of what we can afford and fund and, staff. So, but at least we can say our dream come true is to have a 7-day a week, nine to whatever, facility and just say, these are the recommended uses that we see for this facility. And then obviously the management is something that it looks like we definitely need to form some type of outline of how to reach a consensus.
All right. I had daily use in my first draft, and I think we kind of pulled it out, but I certainly see this as a daily use facility, whatever the hours. Maybe there's some closed day of the weeks. We have to remember the food bank operates there. They set up on Tuesday and there's a line of cars on Wednesday. And so I don't know that that's, the best setting to be operating center. So, I mean, there's some realities of where we're at.
I know I'm in the minority here again, but I think it should be open on an as needed event, like when there's a class happening or when there's something happen, but it shouldn't just sit with the person at a desk.
Well,
So you're saying it needs to be open?
Open as needed. No, as needed. When there's a specific offering there, but if it's just somebody sitting behind a desk.
And allowing people to
yeah,
walk through?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that it'd be just somebody sitting behind a desk. if that's, if they were given, if the direction was that there be activities planned, I think that's really negative.
I think that's one of the evolutionary things that Carrie keeps talking about. We will learn whether we need it Tuesday nights or 5 nights a week or 7 nights a week. That'll happen. That will evolve into whether we need a person there all the time because there are actual events happening all the time, or whether just once in a while.
Mhm.
And of course, I thought we were pretty
Sorry,
much
Andrew.
decided that this was an interpretive center that's there for people to drop in and learn about the Nakus village on a regular basis, learn about ecology on a regular basis. So it's like we want to decide on that use, but I'm not sure we've.
And I don't know if that's the scope of what we're supposed to be doing either. I think
Right.
that's gonna evolve.
You're right, Barb. Once we start stacking up demand, once we get a list of demand, it will all become very clear.
Right.
About how many hours we need to have it open. And Andrew, you started out saying that it was going to be a recreation center. And I can't imagine people not wanting to use it as a recreation center from morning till evening. So we need to really look at what people want to use it as we're going into the model, and then we will design the management around the demand.
Yeah, and that goes back to my original point. This is a facility. We have 9 rooms that we use. And how they become useful depends on how the demand comes that Carrie's talking about. So essentially, we're talking about managing empty spaces. What we call them is essentially irrelevant until we figure out who is going to do the managing. And, we lay on these primary goals. They're more goals than their actual uses. And that's good. That's what we have to do. We have to say this is going to have ecological, environmental, heritage, cultural stuff involved in everything that happens. But right now it's an empty space. It will be an empty space. And when things start popping up, and we have classes that will want to be presented, and we will have out of towners coming in saying, I want to do, every time I think of something, it's inappropriate. But I was going to say basket weaving. That's, knitting, and they want to do a knitting class. Great, that's fine. Make it cultural and we'll work with it. We'll figure this out as the demand comes in.
And I think we create the demand.
Right. And that's why you hire a really good director that is, that can start the marketing and start the outreach and begin to form what it is that, we're going to be, what are going to be the most popular uses for the space, go at least to start. It will evolve as people have great success, but nobody wants to look at a locked up building. That's an underutilized asset and it doesn't help the community or anybody. So.
And also on top of that, it is a unique space. It has this interpretive element that's already built into it. Where it is, what we have outside, the lobby, those are all the interpretive elements that are going to sell it to the folks that want to come in and do presentations on birding or canoeing or something. It's a round robin. It's what it is that sells it, and what happens in it will evolve what it is.
And I think we need to design it as an interpretive center that you can drop in and learn things on a regular basis, and that there are interpretive exhibits. And I think we need to make that decision because CETA does need to move forward with a design based on how we envision it being used. We're just telling them, create a big open space, I guess we're done. But I don't feel like
they have added all kinds of elements into their mock-up already. I don't know what you're asking them to add more to.
I
Well,
don't
we-
think that they are the ones to do it. Are they the ones that set up interpretive exhibits,
No,
interactive things? No,
But
they're
Sam,
building the space
didn't
that
you
can house it.
mention that if we were going after this interpretive center, that we possibly could recommend that they change the window schematic in the first classroom so that we have more wall space? I mean, isn't that kind of a practical application of what our committee's doing?
I recommended some alterations, not because of that, but because of the fact that alterations would help the facility.
Right. I
Not
agree.
because they would be interpretive or not.
Well, but you said in the first meeting, you said, hey, we already, you know, we have some obvious design conflicts with our use going forward. And if we're saying our use is going to be for interpretive classroom display, items, it could be a smart recommendation to say, put the south windows into at least for the first classroom, into a clear story so that we have more wall space. That would be a smart, alternate design.
And
Correct.
move the collapsible wall between the two classrooms, not
Right.
except essentially was designed as flexible exhibit space.
Mhm.
But to me, we're back to absolutely square one, in my mind. It's like, is it going to be a facility that there are classes in?
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Only
No.
it's
There-
classes and events. Or is it going to be something that's open daily for daily or as close to daily as possible?
Because
That actually has things that people want to come and see and tells them the story about.
If you
the
put
collective
stuff in
name
an
of
empty
people.
room that they want to come and see, yes. Just so you can take that stuff out and use it as a classroom when they want to come and have a classroom. Or take that stuff out and use it as a gallery when they want to have a gallery showing. It is flexible space. You use it for everything. In that duration that you want to have an exhibit for a duration of time, you set it up as an exhibit.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I disagree completely. I think we need set interpretive things. I think you need to walk in and see a model of the Nakus village. And have that information. I think we need some kind of interactive theater that tells people the story of the site and of the ecology. A few things that would drive people who are parked downtown to walk over there, and we can teach them something. I just think opening it up for special occasions just puts us right back in where we had every member of the lodging community screaming at us that we don't need an event center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
No,
think
I
again,
agree.
you're being very right and left. Black and
Yes.
white.
I think that if we have the place where we walk in as Nikus, the tribal artifact, the design is based on the tribal emphasis, but then the next room next to it could be a permanent exhibit space where we have lots of interpretive things going on all the time. Then we have the two classrooms, and then we have another event space, which is the gym. But that way we can always have information happening, and we still have lots of places to have classroom and lots of places to have events. So,
Thank you for saying that so clearly. I
I think it's important that we have, just like if you go to Lewis and Clark Fort Classic, they have interpretive things happening. People are drawn there. Then you go down to the fort itself, they have interactive things that you can do. That is important for this site, that we have something happening there which draws people in, and that they can do hands-on, or they can just read or they can watch. I think that that's the vision we could have, and then we could still have the classroom, 2 classrooms. And one, if the 2 classrooms had a wall that split, the ones on the end, we could have a little movie theater there going events. We could close it back up and have 2 classrooms. That could be the site where we have a lot of interaction going on. Anyway, that's an idea.
That's a great idea for a set amount of time. When you make something like that permanent, it gets stale. Within
it's
a
not
year or
permanent.
so, it gets stale.
It's
So
not
you make
permanent.
it
I
flexible
don't
so
think
you can
I
rotate.
don't think Clatsop is stale. I don't
No,
think
I don't
that
think
the
so either.
Lewis and Clark Center is stale at all.
They
We
just
take those
totally
there all the
remodeled Clatsop.
It doesn't, the story is always changing, you know, that's
Yes.
with the curriculum and you know, I think I'm wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse. But I see programming is changing all the time. There's so much ecological stuff, cultural stuff, that I don't see it getting stale. It would change.
Yeah.
I want you to talk more, Dick. I mean, how do you envision that we're telling the story of that historic site and the ecology?
Well, every single thing that we used, that we wore, that we traveled in, that we ate, came from nature, came, you know, everything that was around us was used, and it was used with the understanding that you use it just a little bit. And if you need more, you move on to another place and gather more. You don't, you know, ecology. You know, and from what I just said, you can use the stream, the creek, for many lessons, different lessons about that environment, about the forest. There's many lessons and curriculum activities that can be used. So, you know, that especially when the town closes down on Monday, Tuesday, you know, I see on those days, there would be a lot of people coming if it were known that activities were going to be happening. And we have cedar bark that we harvest. We pull it off.
Okay, Dick, I guess really what I'm after from you is we seem to be having this conversation about, is this going to be something that's open for events only? Or is it a facility that's open on a regular basis that has some interpretive exhibits, displays on an ongoing basis, and what they might be? What is your vision of how we tell the story?
I think having somebody there ongoing, I think between visitors who are scheduled to come in for specific classes, or whether it's somebody that has worked with, whether it's a tribal person or a non-tribal person. I see it being ongoing, open. Interpretive center that has curriculum that we have access to, that we have developed, that involves what I had just mentioned, the life skills. Showing how you take care of things by not over harvesting. I see it.
Does that mean, Dick, does that mean actively, you're having a person that's actively teaching?
That they're either
Not through interpretation, but actively, an active, tour guide, so to speak?
they would know how to take it to the next level of instruction, if the situation would allow for it. But it would be an interpretive at the first level. There would be materials, illustrations, hands-on things where interpretation could happen. But then if it need be, that person would know the next step of of information, so that they could take it to a different level that could be more instruction rather than interpretation. Wow, you see, there's just so many ifs.
I have a thought that you brought up, Dick, just the thinking about that. Many art institutions or museums, they'll have guided tours or docents that, sign up at 10 o'clock and you can go through the Thunderbird Garden, or you can do it by yourself with interpretive signs. But if you want somebody with more knowledge, you would sign up for tours during the day. Maybe you'd have a 10 o'clock tour and a 2 o'clock tour. These are the ways we could get the TLT money to come in, and we could also create an educational that would happen every day.
We could set things up with the hotels, have materials, advertise the center,
Right.
and say, there's this information, there's an interpretive center, and they could sign up to go down, or they could sign up for just to go through it, or for the classes like you mentioned. I just see it really working, and as an interpretive center, and then the next step, the more in-depth and more class situation.
It's sounding to me like a museum, what is being pitched. And I don't know if that's what everybody thinks is about to be.
That's what I'm hearing too.
I don't think it's a museum.
I think
I think there's
I see it as
some
an
interpretive exhibits.
If it's permanent exhibits, it's a museum.
it's not permanent. It's
Well, it wouldn't-
rotating.
it would not need to be permanent.
I keep hearing that, so that's all I'm just saying.
Okay.
I think there's gonna be certain aspects that are permanent. Or semi-permanent,
I guess
and then there's gonna be roving displays.
I'm just curious how many of the other tribal centers just have programs. They don't have any interpretive information at all. I mean, I would be surprised if there are any. Sorry.
I don't.
No, I mean, to me, what I would really like to see is something going on in the facility every day. I've got, we've got several spaces that can be used. We've got the gymnasium that may or may not lend itself to some kinds of events, but certainly it can be used local, for recreational purposes. And that's too. I think you've got to have it has to be open. You have to have a person there. But I think more than that, you very quickly need to have a second person that
Yeah.
lines up all of these things and manages that kind of thing, because I'd like to have something to go to every day. And I don't see that as a museum, and I don't really think of it necessarily as, you know, interpretive necessarily. I'd just as soon go see an art exhibit or a class that Betty's put on, or, I mean, whatever it is, something that Dick or, you know, the tribe has got. I see it changing all the time, and we've got the spaces to do that. That's what I'd like to see anyway.
One of the things that comes to mind in these discussions is there really needs to be somebody identified, whether it's within the nonprofit or another nonprofit or the city, somebody that can write grants right up front, that can work with the nonprofit and who is a grant writer, who knows where to go and how to sell the activities or the mission statement. Because I just know there is so much money available, but somebody needs to be identified to work with the ecology folks, with the tribal folks, with city, on where to go to get the right money.
And where do we draw the line between interpretive is free? Is it our classes, you know, is a tour, a private tour through the garden? Go down the creek? Is that provided? Is that like, I mean, I think easily a private thing in a classroom that's a chunk of time and it's scheduled is not, we're not gonna offer those for free, right? I don't know. Just got me thinking.
I like all these ideas about it being as active as possible and that there are things going on. But it also just feels like there need to be a few foundational interpretive things that people can drop in and learn. And yes, they could change.
Well, it's just like if you go to Les Shirley, you see the interpretive signs about Lewis and Clark, right? You can have that kind of thing throughout. And then you can also have live people coming through. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. And
I love Bruce's original pitch about the kind of, or your pitch about the you know, you could take a self-guided tour through the grounds.
yeah,
And that wouldn't cost anyone any money. But besides the ground maintenance, you know, and it wouldn't require, I mean, like we're talking, I mean, like, I know it's not necessarily our purview, but I talk to people about on the street, like about the cost, you know, there needs to be money left over for programming too. And the more staff and the more time, that shrinks the money for programming.
well, that's why we get grants, so that we can afford to do the programming. Yeah.
Okay.
All of the viable centers that Deb and I researched do both. So I can assure you that those models can play forward. You don't have to be scared of that model. You start working at the beginning and you work your way up.
You move the visitor center there?
No.
No,
That's not our
logistically
purview.
made.
It's something that I had thought about.
I did originally.
And it kind of,
Physical location makes that would make that so difficult.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about, but you're talking about staffing, daily staffing, already existing with TLT dollars. Visitor center has daily staffing in the tune of $200,000+
And that's one person at a time, right?
I'm not exactly sure of,
I'm pretty sure, whenever I go in there,
Yeah.
there's one person at the desk.
yeah, so
Oh, you
But
mean
still,
staff.
Yeah.
that's one person to open the door and close the door and check people into the gymnasium.
And is that year round?
I wanted to reach out to Dick and ask him this question, actually, because I have pictured the Nakus village, the Nakus people, as the first information center.
Yeah.
People came in and they gave them something to eat, or they told them where to go get something to eat. They told them where it might be a good place to shelter. You know, they
That's
tell
true,
them
yeah.
what's in the area. And I don't know if your comment is about parking,
It is.
but how many, look at the parking now, it's the same situation.
Well, but
2 parking spaces out front.
if it were
There's-
logistically different, that would make all the sense in the world. But the centrality of the information center is why people are there.
And I would say it's the people coming into town who could really use that information right there before they get in the thick and they don't know where to go and they don't know where to park and they don't know where anything is. Feels to me like it would be a couple of solutions. And I realize there's probably some blowback from it. It's blasphemy or something, but it is something that occurred to me. And Dick, do you want to say anything about
2
that?
birds in one stone. It's just.
Well, I don't think it's because of the parking. I think it could be used to help disperse other information about what goes on. But for it to be the information center, I just don't think parking would allow.
I've worked in the information center. I've never seen more than 3 or 4 people in there at a time.
Well, and we're moving towards an era where people use their phones to figure stuff out. They don't
yeah.
need to go ask where something is. And so they have it in their pocket.
Skamania Lodge has an open place when you walk in that has all the information about everything going on around them and what they do. And they go in there and get brochures, they can see a video, they can kind of figure out what they're gonna do while they're there.
That is a
Everything was-
that is a 20th century model.
That budget in
Yes,
this facility.
Sure.
Well, the lobby of the gym could be used.
Well, I don't know.
I think we've also lost track of,
Yeah.
I mean, we've
Let's,
lost track of a.
and it's getting late.
Point that we
It
made
is.
earlier, in that this is an amenity to the downtown area. So that hopefully people will walk to it. So you want them to go to the information center to find out where this place is.
Yeah.
Because it's special.
It is.
I think it'd be nice, Gary, to maybe have some direction for our next meeting. But
Yes.
and some very specific questions that need to be answered. Because I think that we're all willing to hone in a little harder here and make some decisions. So
Okay,
Gary,
so
could we vote on this revision? that you-
We have another round.
Oh, we don't have the new revision.
I'm gonna take the feedback I got and.
Okay, all right, okay.
But I also don't know that we want to make that final recommendation until we do all the recommendations.
all right.
Because it may change it
Okay,
and maybe
But I
give
think
us
we
some more
should
time to
approve
think
a
about it.
Working
Yes.
statement. Yeah.
I think so.
So we have a meeting
We have our next
already
meeting scheduled.
scheduled for July 6th.
6th, yes.
and what's our assignment for that meeting, Gary?
What do you think are the big questions that we're sitting here debating that we may need to get to the point of a vote?
So there was a lot of uncertainty around the 501c3. How do you create that? It needs to be sourced. I'm not sure how to go about getting more knowledge that quickly, but that was one of the big questions, I thought.
But if our committee is supposed to be deciding recommendations to the city council,
Right.
we're not forming the 501c3. We're going to hope there's people in our community that are
Fair enough.
interested in.
Well,
Clearly, we need to move along this discussion about the management model.
Right.
But I'm not even sure we're there on the use model. The whole debate about it just being an event center or it being an interpretive center.
I don't want it to be just anything. I want it to be evolving.
And I'm voting completely for an interpretive center. That's, I mean, I would like to see a full open 7-day a week eventually, even if we can't accomplish it on the first day of it, I would like to see a 7-day a week open interpretive center with events and classes and recreation. And I definitely, Gary, want us to address the tourism mandate and make sure that we are satisfying that, because that's a mandate. We have to do that.
I second what you say, Gary.
Thanks.
Sam, of course.
Sam, what do you think?
We want to hear from you.
I agree with Carrie because she's gotten over the top of the terminology. If it's an interpretive center that has events, that's it. I would go the other way. I'd say it's an event center that has interpretation, but it's apples and oranges. And actually, I agree with what Barb said. It needs to do everything.
Mhm.
Sometimes it sounds like we're in perfect agreement, and then sometimes it's like, okay, I don't know.
When you adjourn.
Will the council accept that? We need a facility that does everything time.
Well, what we're doing is we are satisfying those terms that we just put down in the statement, which says, yes, we will provide recreation, we will provide education, we will provide cultural enrichment, we will provide, and if we can do it 7 days a week, that would be 100% utilization of this asset. So that's what I'd like to have everybody say yes on. I think that would move us forward very quickly.
I don't
Okay.
vote, but I say yes.
And to Gary's, excuse me, to Gary's initial question here is what questions does he want for us to answer? I think we need to hammer out the nuts and bolts of what Carrie just said.
But I don't think but I know, Sam, I know we do need to do that. I agree with you, except for I'm not sure we have to do that as the advisory committee. I think that we just need to say, yes, that is what we need.
I think we do, just to give them definition of what we're trying to talk about, because this is pretty loosey-goosey still. It's nice to say, yes, these are our goals, but I think we also need to give them some foundation to work with. I'm not saying the actual details, but I'm saying the foundation of how to work.
Okay, but what if we say, what if we agree on the goals and then move on and say, okay, and we're looking at these X, Y, and Z items that define those goals, for instance, as in kind of thing. But as we're talking about, this all evolves. So we're trying to not get mired in minutia that might or might not have a demand in the future. So we just want to make sure that we're covering our goals.
I agree. Covering the goals, not getting in the minutia, but there is an in-between that we need to say, these are how we define these actions to happen. And I think there is some level of definition that the goals need yet.
Okay, but that's gonna take some.
Yeah. That's what Gary wanted.
You're gonna have to
Questions
spell
for the
that
next-
out. You're gonna have to actually write that down on a board or something. So
That's what.
so
Yeah,
that
that's
we
what Gary
can
wanted.
so that we can look at it. So we can look at it and say, okay, what is that? How's that gonna work? So there's an assignment.
I think we need to go a step at a time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to get this broad stroke and agree on it, and then get more granular. If council wants us to keep working on this, I don't know, Nancy's watching, so who knows what they will think, but
I agree. I think we should vote on what we just pretty much all agreed on.
Yeah,
At least make a attempt to put something down. And then then we can go down into the nitty gritty.
Well, I feel like on use, we're darn close.
Yeah.
Like Sam says, there may be some details about exactly what an interpretive center means. But I think we're really close to defining the use in a broad stroke. I think we can do it next meeting. I'll clean this up, I'll shorten the sentences, I'll make the revisions that we talked about. Management, we have more to talk about. But I think we've, it seems like there's a reasonable agreement there, and I don't know if we just need another meeting to keep hashing it out and maybe look at some other models and
Give me an assignment.
decide
Yeah.
on this.
like how did it start, Gary?
Nonprofit
Maybe the
city
assignment
staff.
for Deb and I is how did it start back with these centers? How did they evolve? How did they get
But I-
off the ground?
I think it's important that you look at centers that are reliant on either PLT funds or public funds.
Right,
PLT or public.
Right.
I second that.
and
I
they
would
are,
underline TLT 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I mean,
All the
first
ones- yeah.
PLT, if we could find a group that is financed with TLT funds, but run by a nonprofit, that's your assignment.
okay, but I still think Sam's already addressed the fact that it doesn't have to be TLT. It can be anything that comes from the
that's-
city.
But that's why I added public funds.
Right, public funds, right,
Start
Sam?
with- Start with public funds and then add TLT, just because I
Right.
know, talking to so many other mayors in this
Yeah.
state, that they don't know what TLT stands for.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the Lincoln City Mayor didn't know any others that were funded by TLT, so, but I don't.
I think anybody that's got a facility run with TLT dollars knows what TLT dollars are.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Is there anything else that we need to have defined and people assigned?
No, but I will try to move forward the management models that we've talked about, some of the options, just to at least put us in a spot where we can move that closer next time.
Awesome.
And we've got a meeting. Is it a week from today?
No, it's a week from Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, we got lots of time.
The 6th.
Yeah.
Okay, the 6th. Yes, everyone has that on their calendar. How close do you think we can be at that meeting?
If everybody does their homework, for sure. And I don't see, is there anything wrong with us talking to each other during the process? I mean, I just think that will help move things forward. So we feel like we're all on the same page when we get together.
Bruce, tell us about talking between meetings and what's appropriate and what's not.
What is there, 7 people?
There's 7.
Okay. I believe that 2 of you can talk, possibly 3. I can try to get an answer for you on that.
3 of you should be able to talk,
Yeah,
Chorus.
but you can only talk to the 3 of you.
Yeah.
One of you can't go off and talk to somebody else. That's a serial meeting. So that's kind of where you are. Now, if somebody wants to work with Deb is not on the committee officially. Dick is not on the committee officially. So anybody can talk to them. But to each other, it's like if there's 3 of you that are talking, that's it. Sam, you're laughing. What did I say?
Anybody can talk to Dick and Deb.
Pardon?
Anybody can talk to Dick and Deb.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that's
There we
true.
go.
That was
Okay,
funny. That's all.
Good. We've got a board game. I can play this.
I think the point is we need to be a little careful about that just for
Transparency.
transparency, and being everything should be public, not us working things out behind the scenes. And not that we can't one-on-one talk about some things. And maybe slightly more than that, but it is something we should be careful of.
But,
Do we
but
wanna
what we've been
schedule-
doing, hey Garrett, isn't it okay? What we've been doing is like getting information and then just sending it to Jen. Like, here's another document, here's another document, here's another document. And then that goes to everybody.
And that's fine, that's,
If we send it to everybody, it's okay.
yes.
Okay, okay, good.
Let me jump in also and clarify that I've de facto taken over for Jen for this committee. We talked about this today. So send me your stuff and we can just.
Oh,
keep
thanks,
track.
Tessa.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
So-
you, Tessa.
I am the Tessa Shut here, not Tessa Fund. S,
Okay,
for anyone who doesn't know.
and I'm not Kari Bella Whitmore.
Do we want to schedule a meeting after the 6th?
Okay,
I think we should wait.
We should.
Okay, see where we get on the 6th.
Not
then
that we
look
can't
at-
all agree and be finished on the 6th. We could. So,
Oh, boy.
We'll also caution you that the July calendar is filling up super quickly, so you could always make one and cancel, but the room might not be here after the 6th.
Okay.
what about
Um,
Tuesday, the 18th after the 6th?
City council
Oh,
meeting.
city council.
I
What
have
about
Wednesday
Thursday, the 20th after the 6th?
Design review board. I have Wednesday, the 19th,
Nope, I can't do Wednesdays.
Monday, the 24th.
You don't have anything?
Fine by me.
A new.
I'm good, the 24th.
yes.
Oof, then we got like a big, long wait between me.
But we're
Might
we're
do us
hoping to
good
like,
to-
we're hoping to have some collaboration and get things like settled out.
Well, that gives us
Yeah.
a lot of time to settle it out.
Or
How
forget about it.
how about Monday, the 17th?
City council meeting.
Okay, so 24th then.
I think it's fine. One thing I've noticed is that we don't have time to really digest what comes to us. So, I'd rather have a little more time that we can all look at some of these materials.
We'll just have a lot of homework next time.
Right.
Have a lot
Well,
of
like I
homework.
said,
Yeah.
if we have some homework accomplishments on the 6th, we could be leaps and bounds ahead.
Okay,
Right.
we've got that. Do we have anything for good of the order?
I wanted just to
I
ask
do.
if Dick thinks I should research any of the tribal places that he had mentioned up in Washington. If the group, I just kind of want to get a read on that. Dick.
Well, why don't you and I
5:30.
go through the list together and we can talk about that. We can set up a time in this week sometime.
Okay, yeah, I just wondered how they were funded if they're funded public funds or TLT.
Many of them receive large grants from government and foundations.
There you go.
Tessa, our meeting is the 5:30.
5:30.
Okay.
Mhm.
Go to the order.
Order, Andrew.
I just thought I'd share that myself and the Arts Colony held an event in Nakus Park on Saturday, Art in the Park. And there was challenges. One was the wind. The wind was so fierce coming off the ocean, coming up the creek that a lot of our vendors really struggled and had to move for wind protection behind the school. And the event was a success, but it wasn't. I thought we would capture a whole lot more passersby than we did. And by the time we were up and running, it was a busy, beautiful Saturday. But by the time we were up and running, the parking was taken along with the Beaver. And I just thought to myself, I could imagine people driving into town, like, oh, what's that? And not seeing a place to park for the next 3 blocks and forgetting or moving on to the next thing that they're doing. That was my experience of having an event.
When they get to the hotel, they'll have a brochure telling what amazing things are happening at that space.
And then they'll walk from the hotel.
They'll take the shuttle from the
The
hotel.
shuttle, there you go. The Close in hotels, they'll walk.
That's right.
And the rest shuttle.
Anything else for good of the order?
Betty's driving the bus.
I am.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.